most dangerous addiction in modern history is the one people carry in their pocket willingly. And most people no longer realize their mind is being trained every single day. Not for clarity, not for peace, but for reaction. Every scroll pulls the mind slightly outward. Every notification interrupts a thought before it can fully form. But most of the time, your attention is being used by systems designed to keep you reacting. Every scroll pulls the mind slightly outward. Every notification interrupts a thought before it can fully form. Every endless feed competes for emotional energy that was supposed to belong to your actual life. And slowly, without fully noticing it, many people stop experiencing reality directly. They experience whatever the algorithm gives them next. And maybe this is why so many people now feel mentally exhausted without understanding what is actually draining them. This is the hidden cost of permanent connection. And if silence now feels uncomfortable, the system may already be shaping your nervous system more than you realize. The nervous system never fully rests. The mind never fully settles. Silence becomes unfamiliar. Stillness begins feeling uncomfortable. And eventually, many people lose the ability to hear their own thoughts clearly without digital stimulation surrounding them. This is not weakness. It is overload. Maybe you already know this feeling. The phone beside the bed, the blue light at midnight, the tired eyes still scrolling long after the body asked for sleep, the automatic urge to check something, refresh something, consume something, as if silence itself became difficult to tolerate. The feed keeps moving, but your actual life waits quietly in the background. This is where the neural dark mode begins, not as rejection of technology, but as restoration of mental clarity inside a world engineered for cognitive overload. Dark mode is not darkness, it is reduction. Reduction of unnecessary stimulation, reduction of emotional noise, reduction of fragmented attention, a deliberate lowering of interference so the internal signal can finally become audible again. This is Operating System Zero, not a superior identity, not a digital monarch, but a return to your original mental architecture beneath years of algorithmic conditioning. The system does not need more noise, it needs recovery. Most people try to heal mental exhaustion by consuming even more stimulation. This is the first principle of Operating System Zero. A fragmented attention span creates a fragmented life. Constant interruption trains shallow focus. Constant stimulation trains impulsive thinking. Constant comparison trains emotional instability. And eventually, people stop responding to life intentionally. They simply react to whatever appears next on the screen. This is the silent drift of the digital age. Human beings becoming increasingly disconnected from their own internal direction, not because they are incapable of depth, but because depth requires uninterrupted attention. And this may explain why so many people now feel overwhelmed, even while sitting still. This is why silence matters now more than ever. Not because silence is empty, but because silence reveals what constant stimulation was hiding: exhaustion, anxiety, unfinished thoughts, suppressed emotion, mental fragmentation disguised as entertainment. Some people are no longer resting. They are only pausing briefly between waves of stimulation. And maybe this explains why even weekends sometimes no longer feel restorative. This is why the reset becomes necessary. The neural dark mode slows the system down intentionally. No endless scrolling, no compulsive checking, no constant emotional input every waking hour. Just space, breathing room for cognition itself. Inside the stillness, something strange begins happening. Thoughts become clearer. Emotion becomes less reactive. Attention becomes less scattered. The nervous system begins stabilizing for the first time in years. This is not mystical, it is biological. The modern world normalizes exhaustion so aggressively. Many people no longer recognize burnout until clarity disappears completely. And eventually, people begin realizing something uncomfortable. The problem was never lack of information. It was lack of recovery. The body keeps score of attention. Sleep improves when stimulation decreases. Focus improves when interruption decreases. Creativity improves when mental bandwidth is no longer flooded constantly. The modern world treats exhaustion as normal, but exhaustion is information, the nervous system signaling that overload exceeded recovery long ago. This is the second principle of Operating System Zero. Clarity requires boundaries. Every notification is a decision demanding cognitive energy. Every endless feed is an environment shaping perception. Every repeated distraction rewires something slowly. This is why information hygiene becomes essential, not obsessive isolation, intentional filtration, carefully chosen inputs, carefully protected attention, carefully designed environments, enforcing presence instead of fragmentation. Most people organize their phones better than they organize their minds. And maybe this is why external organization alone never creates internal clarity. Operating System Zero reverses this. The reset begins with subtraction, fewer unnecessary inputs, fewer artificial urgencies, fewer compulsive reactions. Not because technology is evil, but because unfiltered stimulation eventually overwhelms the nervous system. This is why the 24-hour reset matters. 24 hours without scrolling, without endless feeds, without algorithmic noise flooding consciousness continuously. For many people, even this feels uncomfortable initially. The hand reaches for the phone automatically. The mind searches for stimulation reflexively. Silence suddenly feels heavy, because many people no longer experience silence as peace. They experience it as withdrawal. But after enough stillness, something deeper returns. Mental space, awareness, presence, the ability to remain with your own thoughts without needing immediate distraction. And if you have ever experienced even one truly quiet morning where your mind finally felt calm again, you already understand why this protocol matters. Sometimes people look back at old photos, old journals, old voice recordings, and realize how different their inner world once felt before fragmentation became normal, before every quiet moment needed to be filled instantly, before performance replaced presence. And slowly, the nervous system remembers what regulation feels like. This is deep cognitive recovery, not productivity obsession, not optimization mania. Recovery, the restoration of your ability to think independently without permanent digital interference. This is the third principle of Operating System Zero. Your attention is your most valuable internal resource. Whatever repeatedly captures it eventually shapes your identity. This is why attention sovereignty matters, not because focus makes you superior, but because fragmented attention eventually fragments the self. The future will contain even more stimulation than the present. Artificial intelligence will generate infinite content, infinite persuasion, infinite emotional triggers competing for human attention every second. The people who remain mentally clear inside that environment will hold an extraordinary advantage, not because they consume more, but because they learned when to disconnect. Not because they dominate others, but because they are no longer dominated by noise. The strongest minds are rarely the loudest. They are the calmest, the most internally stable, the least reactive. They understand that every unnecessary distraction consumes life energy that can never be recovered. And maybe this is what people were truly searching for all along. Not infinite stimulation, not endless connection, not constant updates from the surface of the digital world. Only the feeling of becoming mentally present inside their own life again. And maybe the reset was never about becoming someone new. Maybe it was about finally hearing the person who had been buried beneath the noise. This is the final truth of Operating System Zero. The goal was never to escape the world. It was to stop losing yourself inside its noise. Because when unnecessary stimulation fades, clarity slowly returns. The nervous system softens. thought becomes cleaner. Because when unnecessary stimulation fades, emotion becomes more intentional, and the human mind begins remembering what it feels like to exist without constant interruption. The reset is complete. Not because the world became silent, but because your attention finally stopped belonging to everything except yourself. And once the noise finally weakens, a deeper realization begins emerging naturally. Attention alone is not enough. The question becomes, what kind of life deserves that clarity now? Most people will continue feeding the noise, but a few people will finally begin protecting their mind like something sacred. And once the noise finally weakens, a deeper realization begins emerging naturally. What kind of life deserves that clarity now?